The €750 million cuts to the capital budget will mean the loss of between 6,000 and 9,000 jobs. The Government is also committed to cutting 6,000 public service jobs. The money taken out of the pockets of low and middle income families is money taken out of the community, out of local shops, out of local businesses, and this also will cost jobs. And you've already accepted in your medium fiscal report published 4 weeks ago that there will be 390,000 citizens on the dole in 2015. And the jobs crisis would be much worse but for emigration. Since the start of the year, 54,000 of our mainly young people have left for foreign shores. Today there are 444,000 citizens on the live register. That is more than when Fine Gael and Labour won the election, of an entirely different manifesto. And it's an indictment of your policies and a reflection of your failure. It makes a nonsense of any commitment to create jobs. As for reform, the big wages of the political elites have hardly been touched. A token sum was taken from their super pensions. That's hardly reform, Taoiseach. In opposition, Fine Gael and Labour railed against Fianna Fáil. In government, you seek to emulate them by delivering a budget in which the young, the elderly, the sick, those on disability, lone parents, students and part-time workers are expected to pay for the greed of the golden circle, the political elites, the developers and the bankers. Despite all the pre-election promises, child benefit has been cut. It will cost a 4-child family €432 in 2012 and €768 in 2013. Protect child benefit, vote Labour, declared the Labour Party posters before the general elections. We will maintain social welfare rates, declared the Fine Gael Labour programme for government. And the Minister for Social Protection, Maria, said in 2009, child benefit is keeping many families afloat. It is keeping bread on the table and it is paying the food bills for a huge number of families. I agree with her. She was right then. She's wrong now. During the election campaign, the Taoiseach even went as far as to say that cuts to child benefit would be a make or break issue for Labour and coalition. Since then, circumstances have worsened for families and in particular for children. Child benefit is actually of even greater importance now than it was when you came into government. That hasn't stopped you or Labour making yet another U-turn and breaking yet another election promise. The fact is that these reductions in child benefit are an attack on children and low-income families. The poorest families in the state have been the ones hardest hit by the budget, and lone parents have been deliberately targeted. Under the budget, the upper age limit of the youngest child for new claimants in the one-parent family payment will be reduced to 7 years on a phased basis. This means that by 2014, lone parents of children aged 7 will be deemed available for full-time work, despite the fact that we're in a recession. There are no jobs. There's no comprehensive affordable childcare, no after-school care. So how can these parents go back out into the workforce? The budget also reduces income disregard, that is the amount a lone parent can earn, while still being allowed to claim the full one-parent family payment. That means that parents who parent alone will have to give up part-time, low-paid jobs. It removes the incentive to work. Fine Gael and Labour also promised a new Ireland based on an end to cronyism. We all know now that it's still jobs for the boys at the top. Fine Gael and Labour have appointed over 20 people with connections to both parties to senior positions on state bodies and within the judiciary. Moreover, on 14 occasions, ministers have breached, including the Taoiseach, your own pay cap to award higher salaries to their special advisers. And just this week we have seen the controversy in relation to a former Fine Gael Director of Communications and now Special Advisor to the Minister for Enterprise, Jobs and Innovation, Richard Burton. Bruton Gumalesko. Taoiseach, you saw fit to intervene directly to seek this pay raise of €35,000 to a party crony, which is more than the average industrial worker could expect to earn in a year. And this isn't just a one-off. This is a consistent practice of this government. In your own office, you have 2 special advisers on salaries of €168,000 a year, more than double the first point of the salary cap your government has set. Agus Yanni tú Sinn, seo a wad is a Takuraha, Milchanach a Garu, or Hishti Inaraka, or Chowley Augustini Mikusaha. Taoiseach, this is cronyism of the most blatant kind. It's hypocrisy. And you do this while you impose savage cuts on lone parents, on the disabled and on families. Under Fine Gael and Labour's watch, former Secretary-General received a golden handshake worth a whopping €713,000, including an annual pension of €142,000. And every time Sinn Féin questions the scandalously high pay and pension arrangements for the top people in the public sector, government ministers excuse it on the basis that they're worth it. Paying off failed senior civil servants with bumper pension pots and pump jobs in Europe is a scandal. It's Fianna Fáil all over again. Massive salaries to government ministers, special advisers, judges, hospital consultants and secretaries-general. Yet it is clear that none of the protected elites are worthy of such high pay at a time of economic crisis. Under this government's watch, the tax take is down, the cost of living is increasing, employment is rising, and Fine Gael and Labour have just extended the failed banking guarantee. On what planet does the Taoiseach think he's worth €200,000 a year? On planet Enda. Minister Noonan's budget announced yesterday. John Curran, the order, please.
Just a moment now.
Just spoken to him.
I just want to have order for Deputy Adams a moment.
Thanks,
Continue.
Thank you, Taoiseach.
Yes, I know. Well, and this debate, sorry, Deputy, this debate is going. Deputy, this debate is going on all day. This debate will go on all day, Deputy Hayes.
John Collier.
Yes.
Last John Collier.
Please, in order, please.
Last John Collier. If the Taoiseach wants to table the debate from government's time, then I'm very, very happy to facilitate that. At the moment, I want to talk about the government's budget. He doesn't want me to talk about that.
We'll be at this debate all day, so plenty of patience.
He should address the facts.
Yesterday's budget, Michael Noonan's budget, was a stealth tax budget. Of the €1 billion he raised, the massive bulk of it came from stealth charges. The VAT increase, the household charge, carbon tax, motor tax and excise duties. It is an anti-jobs budget. It is pro-landlord and pro-property speculator. The government has protected property reliefs, allowed capital gains exemptions for people who buy commercial property and don't sell it for 7 years. And this will encourage speculation that people don't have to pay capital gains tax on the profit of a property they sell. You protected the remaining Section 23 reliefs rather than abolishing them, as Labour proposed. And yet, you will not go after the upward-only rent reviews. Ní fólan sibse Ian Rudd or B. You're happy to forgo tax coming into the Exchequer by amending these tax measures, and to compensate for this, you cut child benefit, disability allowance and close community nursing homes. Naira, Manaira Shibsha Hishak. Universal social charge, another unfair tax. Sinn Féin opposed it from the outset. The budget lifted those earning up to 10,000 out of the universal social charge, but left all of those earning up to the minimum wage still in it. Sinn Féin would have abolished this unfair charge. You did keep one promise. You did not go after the high-income earners. Tax rates and bonds remain unchanged, and those on high incomes are protected. We know that indirect taxes hit the poorest hardest. That's the fact. You know that. The decision to cut the fuel allowance by €120 is scandalous. This cut will hit older people and those with disabilities worse. This decision follows cuts of up to 25% to fuel allowance and the household benefits package imposed by the government in September. It comes at a time when fuel prices are increasing sharply. And we know that 2,000 people, mostly elderly people, die every winter here as a result of cold-related illnesses. The stoppage cut of 543 million to the health budget for 2012 will devastate the health services. When added to the existing HSE deficit, the real level of cuts for 2012 will be over 850 million. Hospitals and other services across the state are already under enormous pressure, and these further attacks will only deepen the crisis. You trumpet allocating €35 million to mental health services on one hand, and then with the other hand you strip €50 million from disability, mental health and children's services. And each of those are worthy causes. But I want to deal just specifically with mental health, already the Cinderella of our health services. How are we going to develop any proper strategy on suicide prevention or self-harming when you're taking so much money out of those services? Minister Riley confirmed on Monday that more nursing homes will be closed in 2012. This is dreadful news for elderly people and their families as we approach Christmas. The way in which this government has approached this issue is sleeked. We've seen the names of 80 nursing homes that may be closed leaked to the media, including two in my own constituency of Louth, St Joseph's in RD and the Cottage in Drogheda. However, 2 days after these cuts have been announced, there's still no certainty for these residents. This is no way to treat elderly citizens of this state. The cut to disability allowance payments from €188 to €100 for 18 to 21-year-olds with a disability and €144 for 22 to 24-year-olds with a disability is outrageous. It did spark an angry outrage from the public. It did get a response. It did scare Labour and Fine Gael backbenchers. This morning, in response to my question on one of these, you said that the social welfare bill will not include the budget proposal. It does, Taoiseach. There it is, contrary to what you said this morning. There now, Taoiseach. What sort of a government is this? You took the decision. You said yourself that the entire Cabinet took the decision. You then referred to some sort of a review. I ask you, do you equality proof these matters? You then, in response to that query, our resident clown, the Minister for whatever he is, Pat Rabbit, said that you don't have a machine to run the budget through to equality proof it. Yet within the budget, the Department of Justice has a line of €150,000 for equality proofing. Joined up government, transparent government, better government. So, you may have paused this, Taoiseach. You may have paused this, You may have paused it for now, Taoiseach, but the fact is that you choose to take money off the disabled. It's evidence of how far this government has sunk and how far Labour has strayed from its socialist and James Connolly roots. There are €316 million worth of cuts to education. Taoiseach was waving bits of paper about earlier on. Here's what tells us everything about this government's attitude to education. Totally unqualified commitment by the Taoiseach, and in this case by Rory Quinn, to assist, if elected, to oppose, campaign against any new form of third-level fees, including student fees, graduate taxes, and any further increase in the student contribution. We pledge to use our position in Dáil Éireann to protect the higher education maintenance grant from any and all cuts. I won't read it all. It's available for anyone who wants to. So, increasing the student contribution fee by €250 will make higher education the reserve of the elite. I spoke to you earlier, Taoiseach, about what a republic is, based on citizens. Citizens should have the right to access to education at all levels. You also plan to cut guidance counselling. This will have far-reaching consequences for young people who need support at schools. It will mean many students who require emotional and psychological support will have nowhere to turn, and you must know this from your former career. They'll have nowhere to turn in a time of crisis. This comes against an alarming backdrop of a rising rates in suicide, self-harm and depression amongst our young people. Added to this is the challenges faced by teachers who have to deal with bullying in the classroom. Now more than ever, we need guidance counselling services in our schools. The appalling decision, and this appalling decision under a Labour Minister, makes a mockery of Labour's past commitment to ensure young people attending schools have the proper supports available so that they can reach their full potential. Over the last few days, we've seen the EU President, we've seen the French President and the German Chancellor propose wide-ranging changes to the EU Treaty. And their goal, clearly, they said it out, they're not hiding behind anyone, is to control the budgets of Member States. This government refuses to share the Van Rompuy report with all the political parties in this Dáil. So much for transparency, for a new way of working, for political reform. And you've refused on a number of occasions, I've raised it over the last few days, to have an urgent debate before you go to discuss these vital matters in Brussels. Let me say very, very clearly that Sinn Féin fundamentally rejects any further loss of fiscal powers. We will oppose efforts to facilitate this. We will demand that, despite clear efforts by the EU leadership and this government to avoid a referendum, that the people, that citizens must have their say. Taoiseach, if you were clear of these issues, if you had a position which stood up for Irish interest, you would have spelt it out. Your failure, your refusal to do so, indicates that you're going to acquiesce to the diktat of a European superpowers and to the bigger European states. These governments may be bigger, but that doesn't mean that they're right, and we should not hug the forelock to them. In the EU debate last week, you indicated your willingness to concede even greater fiscal sovereignty to the EU. On Sunday night, you said you wanted to be the Taoiseach who returns Irish economic sovereignty. You can't be both. You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth at the same time. The people deserve clarity. They deserve clear leadership. Last conclusion, there can be no recovery without job creation and economic stimulus. The cuts announced to projects such as Metro North, the Dart Interconnector, the N2A5 are cuts to vital projects which would have created thousands of jobs and would have put the economy in a strong place for recovery. Ditto with your proposals for next generation broadband services. Sinn Féin would not cut capital spending. Order. Our capital...
Please, could we lower the noise level, please? No. Deputy Adam.
Sinn Féin would not cut capital spending. Our capital investment proposals would significantly contribute to Ireland's competitiveness as well as developing a sustainable, performing economy. Investment in infrastructure not only benefits jobs creation in the immediate term, it also supplies side benefits for businesses and for the state. And for those who want to listen, we would fund this proposal from the remaining $5.3 billion in the National Pensions Reserve Fund and $1.7 billion from the European Investment Bank. And, as you said before the election, we would not put money into criminally bad banks or pay unguaranteed bondholders. Before I conclude, last conclusion, let me remark on one other aspect of bad policy and bad manners from the government benches. The actions of government backbenchers during the budget day speeches demonstrates the real cynicism of this government. Rather than listen to the criticisms, the constructive proposals from this side, you heckle, harangue and shout down other Chak Dadali. Ministers are generally listened to respectfully by Sinn Féin, no matter how provocative they may be. But government Teachtaí Dála, including occasionally, as we've seen just now, the Taoiseach himself find it difficult to contain themselves when our Teachtaí are speaking. Now, the occasional, when it occurs, witty intervention, even the odd heckle, a spontaneous remark, may liven things up, but the concerted efforts to shout down, bully or silence the Speaker is unacceptable. And there are repeat offenders. And there are repeat offenders, habitual serial shouters with nothing of substance to say for themselves and no willingness to listen to others who might have something to offer. It's little wonder, Taoiseach, that George Lee left. Sexism is also alive and well in this Dáil. This was demonstrated clearly when Mary Lou was making her response to Minister Howland on Monday. She was interrupted 65 times. 65 times in 1.5 an hour speech. One Fine Gael misogynist interrupted 27 times. And these aren't my figures. These were given to me by a government Teachtaí Dála who I spoke to quietly on this issue. He went and checked it out. Let me give notice. Section 31, internment without trial, special courts, death squads. Many members of our party were killed in the north and here in this state in the county of Donegal. Heavy gangs, decades of failed propaganda, demonisation and revisionism did not silence Sinn Féin. So be sure, Las Concordia, that a motley crew of bad-mannered Amadon, lobby fodder for the government, will not silence us. We have a mandate to be here. We will make our voice heard, and we will make it heard clearly. There's also, if I may say so, Queebin indeed beat me to it the other day. He told us that he's heard more mention of the North in the last 9 months than in his 15 years here. And sadly, this newfound interest springs from the desire to distract attention from the government's policies. It's not out of concern for anyone in the 6 counties. And sometimes it's expressed as part of the general juvenile babble that I've just spoken of. But other times it comes from the ministers, including the Taoiseach. And usually the remarks are self-serving, inaccurate and downright incorrect. And such remarks, as I've told the Taoiseach, diminish him and your office. You know, and all the other ministers know, that the executive in the North does not have fiscal autonomy. It cannot raise revenue through taxation. And I would actually welcome the support of the government parties for a campaign to secure fiscal powers for the executive to take it from London into Belfast. But maybe that's too much to ask at a time when Sinn Féin in the North is attempting, with the active assistance of the DUP, to wrest such powers from London. Labour and Fine Gael are preparing to give away fiscal powers to the EU. The Taoiseach knows that the cuts in the North come from the Tory budget. It demeans anybody here to use a British Tory government's cuts in the 6 counties inflicted upon citizens there in some way to distract attention from what we're trying to say and from what your government is doing. Our ministers in the North set themselves the task of protecting the most vulnerable and to creating jobs. That's the task which Labour should have set themselves. If there's any rationale for Labour being in government, it should have been to do that. That's the one key difference, one of many, between Labour and this government and Sinn Féin in the executive. In the executive, among other positive measures, Sinn Féin have blocked the introduction of water charges, invested more in infrastructure and in education in the history of the state, and introduced free prescriptions. What have you done? Cut fuel allowance, cut child benefit, cut payment for lone parents, cut job seekers allowance for part-time workers, cut 470 million out of local economies, cut this disability allowance, and cut funding for North-South cooperation in the Department of Arts, Heritage and the Gaeltacht. 9% cut. I would go on, but I think you're aware of the hypocrisy in the posturing on these matters. It's little wonder there's disappointment with people who tuned in to hear what was going to come out of here. They wanted to hear solutions. We made a pre-budget submission. I made sure it was sent to you, Taoiseach. I sent it also to the Minister of Finance. We were open to discuss it with you at any time. You did take in some of the small measures that we were advocating, but at the end of it all, you know, do you remember the 5-point plan? Our 5-point plan is like a 5-pointed star. It gives light, clarity and direction. You've lost even that, Taoiseach. This is a bad budget, but it's your budget. It's Labour and Fine Gael's budget. It isn't Fianna Fáil's budget. The Greens aren't here. You consciously made the choice to introduce the measures which you have applied this week. This budget represents the very worst of bad choices. And if you make the same bad political choices at the EU summit, then the consequences will be every bit as severe. Indeed, every bit as severe as the decisions made by your predecessors 90 years ago in other negotiations.